Chapter 2. The Vanity of Fortune's Gifts. Summary. Philosophy reproves Boethius for the foolishness of his complaints against fortune. Her very nature is caprice. 2. Philosophy in Fortune's name replies to Boethius' reproaches, and proves that the gifts of fortune are hers to give and to take away. 3. Boethius falls back upon his present sense of misery. Philosophy reminds him of the brilliancy of his former fortunes. Boethius objects that the memory of past happiness is the bitterest portion of the lot of the unhappy. Philosophy shows that much is still left for which he may be thankful. None enjoy perfect satisfaction with their lot. But happiness depends not on anything which fortune can give. It is to be sought within. All the gifts of fortune are external. They can never truly be our own. Man cannot find his good in worldly possessions. Riches bring anxiety and trouble. High place without virtue is an evil, not a good. Power is an empty name. 7. Fame is a thing of little account when compared with the immensity of the universe and the endlessness of time. 8. One service only can fortune do, when she reveals her own nature and distinguishes true friends from false. Thereafter for a while she remained silent, and when she had restored my flagging attention by a moderate pause in her discourse, she thus began: If I have thoroughly ascertained the character and causes of thy sickness, thou art pining with regretful longing for thy former fortune. It is the change, as thou deemest, of this fortune that hath so wrought upon thy mind. Well do I understand that Siren's manifold wiles, the fatal charm of the friendship she pretends for her victims, so long as she is scheming to entrap them, how she unexpectedly abandons them and leaves them overwhelmed with insupportable grief. Bethink thee of her nature, character, and deserts, and thou wilt soon acknowledge that in her thou hast neither possessed, nor hast thou lost, aught of any worth. Methinks I need not spend much pains in bringing this to thy mind, since, even when she was still with thee, even while she was caressing thee, thou usedst to assail her in manly terms, to rebuke her with maxims drawn from my holy treasure house. But all sudden changes of circumstances bring inevitably a certain commotion of spirit. Thus it hath come to pass that thou also for a while hast been parted from thy mind's tranquillity. But it is time for thee to take and drain a draught, soft and pleasant to the taste, which, as it penetrates within, may prepare the way for stronger potions. Wherefore I call to my aid the sweet persuasiveness of rhetoric, who then only walketh in the right way, when she forsakes not my instructions. And music, my handmaid, I bid to join with her singing, now in lighter, now in graver strain. What is it, then, poor mortal, that hath cast thee into lamentation and mourning? Some strange, unwonted sight, methinks, have thine eyes seen. Thou deemest fortune to have changed towards thee. Thou mistakest such ever were her ways, ever such her nature. Rather in her very mutability hath she preserved towards thee her true constancy. Such was she when she loaded thee with caresses, when she deluded thee with the allurements of a false happiness. Thou hast found out how changeful is the face of the blind goddess. She who still veils herself from others hath fully discovered to thee her whole character. If thou lickest her, take her as she is, and do not complain. If thou abhorrest her perfidy, turn from her in disdain. Renounce her, for baneful are her delusions. The very thing which is now the cause of thy great grief ought to have brought thee tranquillity. Thou hast been forsaken by one of whom no one can be sure that she will not forsake him. Or dost thou indeed set value on a happiness that is certain to depart? Again I ask, is fortune's presence dear to thee if she cannot be trusted to stay? And though she will bring sorrow when she is gone? Why, if she cannot be kept at pleasure, and if her flight overwhelms with calamity, what is this fleeting visitant but a token of coming trouble? Truly it is not enough to look only at what lies before the eyes. Wisdom gauges the issues of things, and this same mutability, with its two aspects, makes the threats of fortune void of terror, and her caresses little to be desired. Finally, thou oughtest to bear with whatever takes place within the boundaries of fortune's domain, when thou hast placed thy head beneath her yoke. But if thou wishest to impose a law of staying in, departing on her whom thou hast of thine own accord chosen for thy mistress, art thou not acting wrongfully? Art thou not embittering by impatience a lot which thou canst not alter? Didst thou commit thy sails to the winds, thou wouldst voyage not whither thy intention was to go, but whither the winds drave thee. Didst thou entrust thy seed to the fields, thou wouldst set off the fruitful years against the barren. Thou hast resigned thyself to the sway of fortune. Thou must submit to thy mistress's caprices. What? Art thou verily striving to stay the swing of the revolving wheel? O stupidest of mortals, if it takes to standing still, it ceases to be the wheel of fortune. Song I. Fortune's malice. Mad fortune sweeps along in wanton pride, uncertain as Euripus' surging tide. Now tramples mighty kings beneath her feet, now sets the conquered in the victor's seat. She heedeth not the wail of hapless woe, but mocks the griefs that from her mischief flow. Such is her sport, so proveth she her power, and great the marvel, when in one brief hour she shows her darling lifted high in bliss, then headlong plunged in misery's abyss. 2. Now I would fain also reason with thee a little in fortune's own words. Do thou observe whether her contentions be just. Man, she might say, why dost thou pursue me with thy daily complainings? What wrong have I done thee? What goods of thine have I taken from thee? Choose, and thou wilt a judge, and let us dispute before him concerning the rightful ownership of wealth and rank. If thou succeedest in showing that any one of these things is the true property of mortal man, I freely grant those things to be thine which thou claimest when nature brought thee forth out of thy mother's womb. I took thee, naked and destitute as thou wast. I cherished thee with my substance, and, in the partiality of my favor, for thee, I brought thee up somewhat too indulgently. And this it is, which now makes thee rebellious against me. I surrounded thee with a royal abundance of all those things that are in my power. Now it is my pleasure to draw back my hand. Thou hast reason to thank me for the use of what was not thine own. Thou hast no right to complain, as if thou hadst lost what was wholly thine. Why, then, dost bemoan thyself? I have done thee no violence. Wealth, honor, and all such things are placed under my control. My handmaidens know their mistress. With me they come, and at my going they depart. I might boldly affirm that if those things, the loss of which thou lamentest, had been thine, thou couldst never have lost them. Am I alone to be forbidden to do what I will with my own? Unrebuked, the skies now reveal the brightness of day, now shroud the daylight in the darkness of night. The year may now engalland the face of the earth with flowers and fruits. now disfigure it with storms and cold. The sea is permitted to invite with smooth and tranquil surface. Today, tomorrow to roughen with wave and storm. Shall man's insatiate greed bind me to a constancy foreign to my character? This is my art, this the game I never cease to play. I turn the wheel that spins. I delight to see the high come down and the low ascend. Mount up, if thou wilt, but only on condition that thou wilt not think it a hardship to come down when the rules of my game require it. Wert thou ignorant of my character, didst not know how Croesus, king of the Lydians, erstwhile the dreaded rival of Cyrus, was afterwards pitiably consigned to the flame of the pyre, and only saved by a shower sent from heaven? Has it scaped thee how Paulus paid a meed of pious tears to the misfortunes of King Perseus, his prisoner? What else do tragedies make such woeful outcry over save the overthrow of kingdoms by the indiscriminate strokes of fortune? Didst thou not learn in thy childhood how there stand at the threshold of Zeus two jars, the one full of blessings, the other of calamities? How if thou hast drawn over liberally from the good jar? What if not even now have I departed wholly from thee? What if this very mutability of mine is a just ground for hoping better things? But listen, now, and cease to let thy heart consume away with fretfulness, nor expect to live on thine own terms in a realm that is common to all. Song 2. Man's covetousness. What though plenty pour her gifts with a lavish hand, numberless as are the stars, countless as the sand, will the race of man content cease to murmur and lament? Nay, though God, all bounteous, give gold at man's desire honors, rank, and fame, content, not a whit is nigher, but an all-devouring greed yawns with ever-widening need. Then what bounds can e'er restrain this wild lust of having, when with each new bounty fed grows the frantic craving? He is never rich whose fear sees grim want forever near. 3. If fortune should plead thus against thee, assuredly thou wouldst not have one word to offer in reply. Oh, if thou canst find any justification of thy complainings, thou must show what it is. I will give thee space to speak. Then said I, verily, thy pleas are plausible, yea, steeped in the honeyed sweetness of music and rhetoric. But their charm lasts only while they are sounding in the ear. The sense of his misfortunes lies deeper in the heart of the wretched. So, when the sound ceases to vibrate upon the air, the heart's indwelling sorrow is felt with renewed bitterness. Then said she, it is indeed as thou sayest, for we have not yet come to the curing of thy sickness. As yet these are but lenitives conducing to the treatment of a malady hitherto obstinate. The remedies which go deep, I will apply in due season. Nevertheless, to deprecate thy determination to be thought wretched, I ask thee, hast thou forgotten the extent and bounds of thy felicity? I say nothing of how, when, orphaned and desolate, thou wast taken into the care of illustrious men, how thou wast chosen for alliance with the highest in the state, and even before thou wert bound to their house by marriage, wert already dear to their love, which is the most precious of all ties. Did not all pronounce thee most happy in the virtues of thy wife, the splendid honors of her father, and the blessing of male issue? I pass over, for I care not to speak of blessings in which others also have shared, the distinctions often denied to age which thou enjoyedst in thy youth. I choose rather to come to the unparalleled culmination of thy good fortune. If the fruition of any earthly success has weight in the scale, of happiness. Can the memory of that splendor be swept away by any rising flood of troubles? That day when thou didst see thy 2 sons ride forth from home joint consuls, followed by a train of senators, and welcomed by the goodwill of the people, when these 2 sat in curule chairs in the Senate house, and thou by thy panegyric on the king didst earn the fame of eloquence and ability, when in the circus, seated between the 2 consuls, thou didst glut the multitude thronging around with the triumphal largesses for which they looked, methinks thou didst cozen fortune while she caressed thee, and made thee her darling. Thou didst bear off a boon which she had never before granted to any private person. Art thou, then, minded to cast up a reckoning with fortune? Now, for the first time she has turned a jealous glance upon thee. If thou compare the extent and bounds of thy blessings and misfortunes, thou canst not deny that thou art still fortunate. Or if thou esteem not thyself favored by fortune in that thy then seeming prosperity hath departed, deem not thyself wretched, since what thou now believest to be calamitous passeth also. What art thou but now come suddenly in a stranger to the scene of this life? Thinkest thou there is any stability in human affairs, when man himself vanishes away in the swift course of time? It is true that there is little trust that the gifts of chance will abide, yet the last day of life is in a manner the death of all remaining fortune. What difference, then, thinkest thou, is there, whether thou leavest her by dying, or she leave thee by fleeing away? Single quote. Song 3. All passes, when, in rosy chariot drawn, Phoebus gins to light the dawn, by his flaming beams assailed, every glimmering star is paled. When the grove, by zephyrs fed, with rose blossom blushes red, doth rude austere breathe thereon, bare it stands, its glory gone, smooth and tranquil lies the deep, while the winds are hushed in sleep. Soon, when angry tempests lash, wild and high the billows dash, thus if nature's changing face holds not still a moment's space, fleeting deem man's fortunes, deem bliss as transient as a dream. One law only standeth fast, things created may not last. We, then said I, true are thine admonishings, thou nurse of all excellence. Nor can I deny the wonder of my fortune's swift career. Yet it is this, which chafes me the more cruelly in the recalling. For truly in adverse fortune the worst sting of misery is to have been happy. Well, said she, if thou art paying the penalty of a mistaken belief, thou canst not rightly impute the fault to circumstances. If it is the felicity which fortune gives that moves thee, mere name though it be, come reckon up with me how rich thou art in the number and weightiness of thy blessings. Then if, by the blessing of Providence, thou hast still preserved unto thee safe and inviolate that which, howsoever thou mightest reckon thy fortune, thou wouldst have thought thy most precious possession, what right hast thou to talk of ill fortune whilst keeping all fortune's better gifts? Yet Symmachus, thy wife's father, a man whose splendid character does honor to the human race, is safe and unharmed. And while he bewails thy wrongs, this rare nature, in whom wisdom and virtue are so nobly blended, is himself out of danger, a boon thou wouldst have been quick to purchase at the price of life itself. Thy wife yet lives, with her gentle disposition, her peerless modesty and virtue, this the epitome of all her graces. That she is the true daughter of her sire, she lives, I say, and for thy sake only preserves the breath of life, though she loathes it, and pines away in grief and tears for thy absence, wherein, if in naught else, I would allow some marring of thy felicity. What shall I say of thy sons, and their consular dignity, how in them, so far as may be in youths of their age, the example of their fathers and grandfathers' character shines out, since, then, the chief care of mortal man is to preserve his life. How happy art thou, couldst thou but recognize thy blessings, who possessest even now what no one doubts to be dearer than life. Wherefore, now dry thy tears. Fortune's hate hath not involved all thy dear ones. The stress of the storm that has assailed thee is not beyond measure intolerable, since there are anchors still holding firm which suffer thee not to lack either consolation in the present or hope for the future. I pray that they still may hold, for while they still remain, however things may go, I shall ride out the storm. Yet thou sayest how much is shorn of the splendor of my fortunes. We are gaining a little ground, said she. If there is something in thy lot wherewith thou art not yet altogether discontented, but I cannot stomach thy daintiness when thou complainest with such violence of grief and anxiety because thy happiness falls short of completeness. Why, who enjoys such settled felicity is not to have some quarrel with the circumstances of his lot. A troublous matter are the conditions of human bliss. Either they are never realized in full, or never stay permanently. One has abundant riches, but is shamed by his ignoble birth. Another is conspicuous for his nobility, but through the embarrassments of poverty would prefer to be obscure. A third, richly endowed with both, laments the loneliness of an unwedded life. Another, though happily married, is doomed to childlessness, and nurses his wealth for a stranger to inherit. Yet another, blessed with children, mournfully bewails the misdeeds of son or daughter. Wherefore, it is not easy for anyone to be at perfect peace with the circumstances of his lot. There lurks in each several portion something which they who experience it not know nothing of, but which makes the sufferer wince. Besides, the more favored a man is by fortune, the more fastidiously sensitive is he, and, unless all things answer to his whim, he is overwhelmed by the most trifling misfortunes. Because utterly unschooled in adversity, so petty are the trifles which rob the most fortunate of perfect happiness. How many are there, dost thou imagine, who would think themselves nigh heaven, if but a small portion from the wreck of thy fortune should fall to them? This very place which thou callest exile is to them that dwell there in their native land. So true is it, that nothing is wretched, but thinking makes it so. And conversely every lot is happy if borne with equanimity. Who is so blessed by fortune as not to wish to change his state, if once he gives rein to a rebellious spirit? With how many bitternesses is the sweetness of human felicity blent, and even if that sweetness seem to him to bring delight in enjoying, yet he cannot keep it from departing when it will. How manifestly wretched, then, is the bliss of earthly fortune, which lasts not forever with those whose temper is equable, and can give no perfect satisfaction to the anxious-minded. Why, then, ye children of mortality, seek ye from without that happiness whose seat is only within us? Error and ignorance bewilder you. I will show thee, in brief, the hinge on which perfect happiness turns. Is there anything more precious to thee than thyself? Nothing. Thou wilt say, if, then, thou art master of thyself, thou wilt possess that which thou wilt never be willing to lose, and which fortune cannot take from thee, and that thou mayst see that happiness cannot possibly consist in these things which are the sport of chance. Reflect that, if happiness is the highest good of a creature living in accordance with reason, and if a thing which can in any wise be reft away is not a highest good, since that which cannot be taken away is better than it, it is plain that fortune cannot aspire to bestow happiness by reason of its instability, and, besides, a man borne along by this transitory felicity must either know or not know its instability. If he knows not, how poor is a happiness which depends on the blindness of ignorance. If he knows it, he needs must fear to lose a happiness whose loss he believes to be possible. Wherefore, a never-ceasing fear suffers him not to be happy. Or does he count the possibility of this loss a trifling matter, insignificant? Then must be the good whose loss can be borne so equably. And, further, I know thee to be one settled in the belief that the souls of men certainly die not with them, and convinced thereof by numerous proofs, it is clear also that the felicity which fortune bestows is brought to an end with the death of the body. Therefore, it cannot be doubted but that, if happiness is conferred in this way, the whole human race sinks into misery when death brings the close of all. But if we know that many have sought the joy of happiness not through death only, but also through pain and suffering, how can life make men happy by its presence when it makes them not wretched by its loss? Single quote. Song IV. The golden mean, who found it firm and sure, would ever live secure, in spite of storm and blast, immovable and fast, whoso would fain deride the ocean's threatening tide, his dwelling should not seek on sands or mountain peak. Upon the mountain's height, the storm winds wreak their spite, the shifting sands disdain their burden to sustain. Do thou these perils flee, fair though the prospect be, and fix thy resting place on some low rock's show base. Then, though the tempests roar, seas thunder on the shore, thou in thy stronghold blessed and undisturbed shalt rest, live all thy days serene, and mock the heavens' spleen. But since my reasonings begin to work a soothing effect within thy mind, methinks I may resort to remedies somewhat stronger. Come, suppose, now, the gifts of fortune were not fleeting and transitory. What is there in them capable of ever becoming truly thine, or which does not lose value when looked at steadily and fairly weighed in a balance? Are riches, I pray thee, precious either through thy nature or in their own? What are they but mere golden heaps of money? Yet these fine things show their quality better in the spending than in a hoarding. For I suppose 'tis plain that greed always makes men hateful, while liberality brings fame. But that which is transferred to another cannot remain in one's own possession. And if that be so, then money is only precious when it is given away, and, by being transferred to others, ceases to be one's own. Again, if all the money in the world were heaped up in one man's possession, all others would be made poor. Sound fills the ears of many at the same time without being broken into parts, but your riches cannot pass to many without being lessened in a process, and when this happens, they must needs impoverish those whom they leave. How poor and cramped a thing, then, is riches, which more than one cannot possess as an unbroken whole, which falls not to anyone, man's lot without the impoverishment of everyone else. Or is it a glitter of gems that allures the eye? Yet, how really excellent soever may be their splendor, remember the flashing light is in the jewels, not in the man. Indeed, I greatly marvel at men's admiration of them. For what can rightly seem beautiful to a being endowed with life and reason, if it lack the movement and structure of life? And although such things do in the end take on them more beauty from their Maker's care and their own brilliancy, still they in no wise merit your admiration, since their excellence is set at a lower grade than your own. Does the beauty of the fields delight you? Surely, yes. It is a beautiful part of a right beautiful whole. Fitly indeed do we at times enjoy the serene calm of the sea, admire the sky, the stars, the moon, the sun. Yet is any of these thy concern? Dost thou venture to boast thyself of the beauty of any one of them? Art thou decked with spring's flowers? Is it thy fertility that swelleth in the fruits of autumn? Why art thou moved with empty transports? Why embracest thou an alien excellence as thine own? Never will fortune make thine that which the nature of things has excluded from thy ownership. Doubtless the fruits of the earth are given for the sustenance of living creatures. But if thou art content to supply thy wants so far as suffices nature, there is no need to resort to fortune's bounty. Nature is content with few things, and with a very little of these. If thou art minded to force superfluities upon her when she is satisfied, that which thou addest will prove either unpleasant or harmful. But now thou thinkest it fine to shine in raiment of divers colors. Yet, if, indeed, there is any pleasure in the sight of such things, it is the texture or the artist's skill which I shall admire. Or perhaps it is a long train of servants that makes thee happy? Why, if they behave viciously, they are a ruinous burden to thy house, and exceeding dangerous to their own master. While if they are honest, how canst thou count other men's virtue in the sum of thy possessions? From all which, 'tis plainly proved that not one of these things which thou reckonest in the number of thy possessions is really thine. And if there is in them no beauty to be desired, why shouldst thou either grieve for their loss or find joy in their continued possession? While if they are beautiful in their own nature, what is that to thee? They would have been not less pleasing in themselves, though never included among thy possessions, for they derive not their preciousness from being counted in thy riches, but rather thou hast chosen to count them in thy riches, because they seemed to thee precious. Then, what seek ye by all this noisy outcry about fortune? To chase away poverty, I ween, by means of abundance, and yet ye find the result just contrary. Why, this varied array of precious furniture needs more accessories for its protection. It is a true saying that they want most who possess most, and, conversely, they want very little who measure their abundance by nature's requirements, not by the superfluity of vain display. Have ye no good of your own implanted within you, that ye seek your good in things external and separate? Is the nature of things so reversed that a creature divine by right of reason can in no other way be splendid in his own eyes save by the possession of lifeless chattels? Yet, while other things are content with their own, ye who in your intellect are godlike seek from the lowest of things adornment for a nature of supreme excellence, and perceive not how great a wrong ye do your Maker. His will was that mankind should excel all things on earth. Ye thrust down your worth beneath the lowest of things. For if that in which each thing finds its good is plainly more precious than that whose good it is, by your own estimation ye put yourselves below the vilest of things, when ye deem these vile things to be your good. Nor does this fall out undeservedly. Indeed, man is so constituted that he then only excels other things when he knows himself. But he is brought lower than the beasts if he lose this self-knowledge. For that other creatures should be ignorant of themselves is natural. In man it shows as a defect. How extravagant, then, is this error of yours, in thinking that anything can be embellished by adornments not its own. It cannot be, for, if such accessories add any luster, it is the accessories that get the praise, while that which they veil and cover remains in its pristine ugliness. And again I say, that is no good which injures its possessor. Is this untrue? No, quite true. Thou sayest, and yet riches have often hurt those that possessed them. Since the worst of men, who are all the more covetous by reason of their wickedness, think none but themselves worthy to possess all the gold and gems the world contains. So thou, who now dreadest pike and sword, mightest have trolled a carol. In the robber's face hadst thou entered the road of life with empty pockets. O wondrous blessedness of perishable wealth, whose acquisition robs thee of security. Single quote. SONGV. The former age, too blessed the former age, their life, who in the fields contented led, and still, by luxury unspoiled, on frugal acorns sparely fed. No skill was theirs the luscious grape, with honey's sweetness to confuse, nor China's soft and sheeny silks, tea, empurple with brave Tyrian hues. The grass their wholesome couch, their drink, the stream, their roof the pine's tall shade, not theirs to cleave the deep, nor seek, in strange far lands the spoils of trade. The trump of war was heard not yet, nor soiled the fields by bloodshed's stain. For why should war's fierce madness arm, when strife brought wound, but brought not gain? Ah, would our hearts might still return to following in those ancient ways. Alas, the greed of getting glows, more fierce than Etna's fiery blaze. Woe, woe for him, whoe'er it was, who first gold's hidden store revealed, and, perilous treasure trove, dug out the gems that fain would be concealed. What now shall I say of rank and power, whereby, because ye know not true power and dignity, ye hope to reach the sky? Yet, when rank and power have fallen to the worst of men, did ever an Etna, belching forth flame and fiery deluge, work such mischief? Verily, as I think, thou dost remember how thine ancestors sought to abolish the consular power, which had been the foundation of their liberties, on account of the overweening pride of the consuls, and how for that self-same pride they had already abolished the kingly title. And if, as happens but rarely, these prerogatives are conferred on virtuous men, it is only the virtue of those who exercise them that pleases. So it appears that honor cometh not to virtue from rank, but to rank from virtue. Look, too, at the nature of that power which ye find so attractive and glorious. Do ye never consider, ye creatures of earth, what ye are, and over whom ye exercise your fancied lordship? Suppose, now, that in the mouse tribe there should rise up one claiming rights and powers for himself above the rest, would ye not laugh consumedly? Yet if thou lookest to his body alone, what creature canst thou find more feeble than man, who oftentimes is killed by the bite of a fly, or by some insect creeping into the inner passage of his system? Yet what rights can one exercise over another, save only as regards the body, and that which is lower than the body, I mean fortune? What wilt thou bind with thy mandates? The free spirit? Canst thou force from its due tranquillity the mind, that is firmly composed by reason? A tyrant thought to drive a man off free birth to reveal his accomplices in a conspiracy. But the prisoner bit off his tongue and threw it into the furious tyrant's face. Thus, the torches which the tyrant thought the instrument of his cruelty the sage made an opportunity for heroism. Moreover, what is there that one man can do to another which he himself may not have to undergo in his turn? We are told that Boethius, who used to kill his guests, was himself slain by his guest. Hercules, Regulus had thrown into bonds many of the Carthaginians whom he had taken in war. Soon after he himself submitted his hands to the chains of the vanquished. Then, thinkest thou that man hath any power who cannot prevent another's being able to do to him what he himself can do to others? Besides, if there were any element of natural and proper good in rank and power, they would never come to the utterly bad. Since opposites are not wont to be associated, nature brooks not the union of contraries. So, seeing there is no doubt that wicked wretches are oftentimes set in high places, it is also clear that things which suffer association with the worst of men cannot be good in their own nature. Indeed, this judgment may with some reason be passed concerning all the gifts of fortune which fall so plentifully to all the most wicked. This ought also to be considered here. I think no one doubts a man to be brave in whom he has observed a brave spirit residing. It is plain that one who is endowed with speed is swift-footed. So also music makes men musical. The healing art physicians, rhetoric public speakers, for each of these has naturally its own proper working. There is no confusion with the effects of contrary things, nay, even of itself it rejects what is incompatible, and yet wealth cannot extinguish insatiable greed, nor has power ever made him master of himself whom vicious lusts kept bound in indissoluble fetters. Dignity conferred on the wicked not only fails to make them worthy, but contrarily reveals and displays their unworthiness. Why does it so happen? Because ye take pleasure in calling by false names things whose nature is quite incongruous thereto, by names which are easily proved false by the very effects of the things themselves. Even so it is, these riches, that power, this dignity, are none of them rightly so called. Finally, we may draw the same conclusion concerning the whole sphere of fortune, within which there is plainly nothing to be truly desired, nothing of intrinsic excellence, for she neither always joins herself to the good, nor does she make good men of those to whom she is united. Song we, Nero's infamy. We know what mischief dire he wrought Rome fired. The father's slain whose hand with brother's slaughter wet, a mother's blood did stain. No pitying tear his cheek bedewed, as on the corse he gazed. That mother's beauty, once so fair, a critic's voice appraised. Yet far and wide, from east to west, his sway the nation's own, and scorching south and icy north, obey his will alone. Did, then, high power a curb impose on Nero's frenzied will? Ah, woe when to the evil heart is joined the sword to kill. 7. Then said I, thou knowest thyself that ambition for worldly success hath but little swayed me, yet I have desired opportunity for action, lest virtue, in default of exercise, should languish away. Then she, this is that last infirmity, which is able to allure minds, which, though of noble quality, have not yet been molded to any exquisite refinement by the perfecting of the virtues, I mean, the love of glory, and fame for high services rendered to the commonweal. And yet, consider with me how poor and unsubstantial a thing this glory is. The whole of this earth's globe, as thou hast learnt from the demonstration of astronomy, compared with the expanse of heaven, is found no bigger than a point, that is to say, if measured by the vastness of heaven's sphere, it is held to occupy absolutely no space at all. Now, of this so insignificant portion of the universe, it is about a fourth part, as Ptolemy's proofs have taught us, which is inhabited by living creatures, known to us. If from this fourth part you take away in thought all that is usurped by seas and marshes, or lies a vast waste of waterless desert, barely is an exceeding narrow area left for human habitation. You, then, who are shut in and prisoned in this merest fraction of a point's space, do ye take thought for the blazoning of your fame, for the spreading abroad of your renown? Why, what amplitude or magnificence has glory when confined to such narrow and petty limits? Besides, the straitened bounds of this scant dwelling place are inhabited by many nations differing widely in speech, in usages, in mode of life. To many of these, from the difficulty of travel, from diversities of speech, from want of commercial intercourse, the fame not only of individual men, but even of cities, is unable to reach. Why, in Cicero's days, as he himself somewhere points out, the fame of the Roman Republic had not yet crossed the Caucasus, and yet by that time her name had grown formidable to the Parthians and other nations of those parts. Sayest thou, then, how narrow, how confined, is the glory ye take pains to spread abroad and extend? Can the fame of a single Roman penetrate where the glory of the Roman name fails to pass? Moreover, the customs and institutions of different races agree not together, so that what is deemed praiseworthy in one country is thought punishable in another. Wherefore, if any love the applause of fame, it shall not profit him to publish his name among many peoples. Then, each must be content to have the range of his glory limited to his own people. The splendid immortality of fame must be confined within the bounds of a single race. Once more, how many of high renown in their own times have been lost in oblivion for want of a record? Indeed, of what avail are written records, even which, with their authors, are overtaken by the dimness of age, after a somewhat longer time? But ye, when ye think on future fame, fancy it an immortality that ye are begetting for yourselves. Why, if thou scannest the infinite spaces of eternity, what room hast thou left for rejoicing in the durability of thy name? Verily, if a single moment's space be compared with 10,000 years, it has a certain relative duration, however little, since each period is definite. But this same number of years, and a number many times as great, cannot even be compared with endless duration. For, indeed, finite periods may, in a sort, be compared one with another, but a finite and an infinite, never. So it comes to pass that fame, though it extend to ever so wide a space of years, if it be compared to never lessening eternity, seems not short-lived merely, but altogether nothing. But as for you, ye know not how to act aright, unless it be to court the popular breeze, and win the empty applause of the multitude. Nay, ye abandon the superlative worth of conscience and virtue, and ask a recompense from the poor words of others. Let me tell thee how wittily one did mock the shallowness of this sort of arrogance. A certain man assailed one who had put on the name of philosopher as a cloak to pride and vainglory, not for the practice of real virtue, and added, Now shall I know if thou art a philosopher if thou bearest reproaches calmly and patiently. The other, for a while affected to be patient, and, having endured to be abused, cried out derisively, Do you see that I am a philosopher? The other, with biting sarcasm, retorted, I should have hadst thou held thy peace. Moreover, what concern have choice spirits, for it is of such men we speak, men who seek glory by virtue, what concern, I say, have these with fame after the dissolution of the body in death's last hour? For if men die wholly, which our reasonings forbid us to believe, there is no such thing as glory at all, since he to whom the glory is said to belong is altogether non-existent. But if the mind, conscious of its own rectitude, is released from its earthly prison, and seeks heaven in free flight, doth it not despise all earthly things when it rejoices in its deliverance from earthly bonds, and enters upon the joys of heaven? Single quote. Song 7. Glory may not last. Oh, let him who pants for glory's guerdon, deeming glory all in all, look and see how wide the heaven expandeth, earth's enclosing bounds how small. Shame it is, if your proud swelling glory may not fill this narrow room. Why, then, strive so vainly, oh, ye proud ones, to escape your mortal doom? Though your name to distant regions bruiteth, o'er the earth be widely spread, though full many a lofty sounding title on your house its lustre shed, death at all this pomp and glory spurnate, when his hour draweth nigh, shrouds alike th exalted and the humble, levels lowest and most high. Where are now the bones of stanch Fabricius, Brutus, Cato, where are they? Lingering fame, with a few graven letters, doth their empty name display. But to know the great dead is not given from a gilded name alone. Nay, ye all alike must lie forgotten. 'Tis not you that fame makes known. Fondly do ye deem life's little hour lengthened by fame's mortal breath. There but waits you, when this, too, is taken at the last a second death. 8. But that thou mayst not think that I wage implacable warfare against fortune, I own there is a time when the deceitful goddess serves men well, I mean when she reveals herself, uncovers her face, and confesses her true character. Perhaps thou dost not yet grasp my meaning. Strange is the thing I am trying to express, and for this cause I can scarce find words to make clear my thought. For truly I believe that ill fortune is of more use to men than good fortune. For good fortune, when she wears the guise of happiness, and most seems to caress, is always lying. Ill fortune is always truthful, since, in changing, she shows her inconstancy. The one deceives, the other teaches, the one enchains the minds of those who enjoy her favor by the semblance of delusive good. The other delivers them by the knowledge of the frail nature of happiness. Accordingly, thou mayst see the one fickle, shifting as the breeze, and ever self-deceived, the other sober-minded, alert, and wary, by reason of the very discipline of adversity. Finally, good fortune, by her allurements, draws men far from the true good. Ill fortune oft-times draws men back to true good with grappling irons. Again, should it be esteemed a trifling boon, thinkest thou, that this cruel, this odious fortune hath discovered to thee the hearts of thy faithful friends, that other hid from thee alike the faces of the true friends and of false? But in departing she hath taken away her friends, and left thee thine what price wouldst thou not have given for this service in fullness of thy prosperity when thou seemedst to thyself fortunate? Cease, then, to seek the wealth thou hast lost, since in true friends thou hast found the most precious of all riches. Song 8. Love is Lord of all. Why are nature's changes bound to a fixed and ordered round? What to leagued peace hath bent every warring element? Wherefore doth the rosy morn rise on Phoebus' car upborne? Why should Phoebe rule the night, led by Hesper's guiding light? What the power that doth restrain in his place the restless main, that within fixed bounds he keeps, nor o'er earth in deluge sweeps? Love it is that holds the chains, love o'er sea and earth that reigns. Love, whom else but sovereign Love? Love, high Lord in heaven above, yet should he his care remit all that now so close is knit in sweet love and holy peace, would no more from conflict cease, but with strife's rude shock and jar all the world's fair fabric mar. Tribes and nations love unites by just treaties, sacred rites, wedlock's bonds he sanctifies by affection's softest ties. Love appointeth, as is due, faithful laws to comrades' true love, all sovereign love. Oh, then, ye are blessed, ye sons of men, if the love that rules the sky in your hearts is throned on high.